thanks for coming out in December. I know this is kind of a crazy month to try to do a workshop. But I made this as boring as possible because that's my solution to sleep. All right, well, I'm Dr. Jamie Davis. Most of you guys know me. Well, all of you know me. And yeah, just a little bit of my background. My past life before becoming an acupuncturist, I was an anthropologist. I have a bachelor's and a master's in medical anthropology. And then I did pre-med before starting acupuncture school. And then I have a master's and a doctorate in acupuncture and Chinese medicine. So I've been doing this for about 17 years. And what really brought me to this medicine was because I was suffering myself. And from the time I was 11 until my early 20s, I was so sick. Nausea, migraines, vomiting, body pain, fatigue, and doctors had no idea what was wrong with me. So experimental surgeries, tons of medications, all of it made me worse. And I honestly thought I was just gonna die and no one would care. Until I was in school and one of my colleagues did a paper on acupuncture, and I'm like, that sounds crazy, but I tried everything else. And it was the first thing to give me any kind of relief in over a decade. So then I simultaneously did pre-med while I finished up my master's because I knew this is what I was meant to do with my life. And it took another 10 years to get a diagnosis, but it ended up being latent Lyme, or actually neuroborreliosis complex. That was Lyme disease in my brain and other organs, along with 9 other co-infections, including anaplasmosis, which was the worst one, and that's kind of like American malaria. So, but I'm on the mend now, and I attribute most of that to this medicine. So yeah. All right, well, I like these small workshops on specific topics because we're able to dive a little deeper. My last workshop was on everything, and that was a little overwhelming. So, but sleep is an important one because if we're not sleeping, we're not healing, and it makes everything else we do not function properly. So, all right, what even is sleep? Turns out sleep is a time when our brains are actively doing a number of activities. They're making neurotransmitters, they're repairing damaged tissues. 75% of our growth hormone is secreted at night while we sleep. Now you would think that that's only important for kids, because yes, that is what helps them to grow taller and bigger. But for adults, it's what manages our weight, especially around our belly. It's what repairs our muscle tissue, and it's what regulates our cholesterol. So without growth hormone, you will have cardiovascular disease, weight, especially around the middle, and high cholesterol. Our bodies are healing from oxidative damage from the day, generating neurotransmitters, processing emotions. This is actually a really important key piece to our mental health. If we can't go into deep sleep and process our emotions of the day, they just continue to accumulate, and we end up with more and more anxiety. Different cycles do different things. The first cycle is 4 stages of non-REM. The first stage is right when you're between asleep and awake. Then you move into light sleep, where your heart rate and your breathing regulates, your temperature drops. And then the 3rd and 4th stages are a deep sleep. And research is now showing us that it's these 2 phases that most of the healing actually happens. We used to believe that it was during the REM sleep that we had healing, but now studies are showing that it's actually this time, the 3rd and 4th stages. And then we move into the REM phase, rapid eye movement. Brain waves during the REM phase are very similar to being awake. Your breath rate increases, and the body is temporarily paralyzed to keep you from thrashing out your dreams, because this is the dreaming state. So if you tend to thrash around a lot while you're sleeping, there's a problem in that mechanism in your brain that you have to look into. And then the whole cycle repeats again, usually about 3 to 4 times. 30% of adults suffer from short-term insomnia. Some studies put it more like 30 to 50%, which is actually a really big gap. But safe to say at least 30. In my practice, I would say it's most of the people that come into me have insomnia. 10% suffer from chronic or long-term insomnia. The body's pretty good at recovering from short-term, but when we get into long-term, that's when we start having real damage to our health. As much as 40% of adults report accidentally falling asleep during the day. Not that they go take a nap, but that they actually fall asleep on accident. I think that's a pretty profound number, especially when you're thinking about like machinists or labor jobs. You don't want them falling asleep doing something, power tools or driving something, like a plane, for example. That would really scare me if a pilot had that problem. Our bodies are designed to handle short term, like I talked about. That's why we feel like crud with jet lag, but eventually we bounce back. But with chronic insomnia, this is where we start getting into mental health issues, cardiovascular disease, hormonal imbalance, autoimmune disease, poor memory, concentration, and just overall reduced quality of life. So, what regulates sleep? It's hormones. Hormones are the key. The pineal gland, little peanut-shaped gland inside the brain, releases a hormone called melatonin, and melatonin is vital for sleep. Cortisol is released from our adrenal glands, which sit above the kidneys, and cortisol is what wakes us up and keeps us awake during the day. Now, melatonin and cortisol are antagonistic to each other, meaning that one counteracts the other. That's how they balance each other out. But what's really interesting is that they both are stimulated by light. So melatonin won't release if there's light. It has to be dark, and then as light increases, that's signaling to release the cortisol. This thing called HPATG axis, you don't have to remember all these things: hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal, thyroid, gonads. This is all of our endocrine glands. They release hormones based on specific strategies that our body is dealing with within our environment. So our choices matter. So if our choices during the day are signaling to our endocrine system that we are under attack, why would it give you enough melatonin to go into a deep sleep? Because if you fall asleep and that tiger is still chasing you, you're gonna die. So we're designed to respond to that stress and not go into a deep sleep. It's not your body not working, it's actually your body working exactly how it was designed to do. So where does the breakdown happen? I love this slide. This is a cross-section of a eukaryotic cell, and if you, like, there's just so much going on in there. You have like these whole cities and civilizations of cells inside your body. There are over 10 trillion cells inside of your body, and 25,000 different encoding genes, stimulating over 100,000 different protein configurations. Your body is constantly recreating itself 100 million times every minute. I mean, that's amazing. And for us to have good health, all of these cells need to be functioning properly. And so while it is so amazing that we have these trillions of cells working nonstop for us, it also leaves a lot of room to have breakdown, especially when we are not taking in the nutrients that are essential for the enzymatic processes. So, also another fun fact is that while you have tons of your own genes and cellular information, you have even more genetic material from microbes in your environment. You have a planetary-sized civilization of other entities living inside of you, working together with your own body, which is just mind-blowing if you think about it. Okay, so this is where our choices matter comes in. We can actually have, our choices can actually dictate how we live. This side, the parasympathetic nervous system, this is where we're digesting and sleeping and relaxing and healing. Living out in this side means that you have good bowel movements, you have great sleep, you have fertility, you have good libido, you're living your best life. The sympathetic nervous system is also crucial because if we always lived in the parasympathetic, we wouldn't get anything done. However, the sympathetic, that is now we gotta shut down all the non-essential things like digestion, and we gotta move, we gotta get things done. Unfortunately, in our culture, everything in our life stimulates us to live in the sympathetic. Watching the news, crime shows, driving in traffic, arguments with our loved ones, dealing with bosses and bills and all that kind of stuff. That is signaling our body to be in the sympathetic, and that's not where we can digest or heal or make the proper hormones to sleep. Another thing about stress is we think it's something like that we're doing or thinking about, but stress also means pollution and poor relationships, lack of nutrition, environmental toxins, things like that. Those are all stressors to your body. Okay, so I'm going to talk about what acupuncture can do for insomnia, but before I talk about acupuncture, I just want to make it really clear about what energy is when I talk about energy. There's kind of like this misnomer that acupuncture is an energetic medicine, meaning that we are basically placebo, and that's not the energy that we're working with. So we don't mean it in a metaphysical sense, we actually mean it in a biochemical, electrical, and mechanical sense on the cellular level. So energy comes in many forms. Four specifically that we're going to talk about. Chemical energy is energy formed in the bonds of the chemical substances. For example, ATP, that's the chemical energy that activates the muscle. Electrical energy is when charged particles called ions move along or across the cell membrane. For example, the nervous system uses electrical currents called nerve impulses. Mechanical energy is energy directly involved in moving matter, like your legs moving your pedals in the bicycle. That's mechanical energy. And then there's radiant electromagnetic energy, and this is the visible light, infrared waves, X-rays, things like that. So acupuncture specifically is working on these first three, the chemical, electrical, and mechanical energy. We're moving the muscles and the fascia, that's where the mechanical energy comes from. And then with the acupuncture needle, we're stimulating a chemical reaction inside the fibroblast cells. And the reason why we use a metal needle as opposed to just pressure is because it's a lightning rod for the electrical energy of your nervous system. So what is acupuncture? This slide's not going to help you know because it's really blurry. But acupuncture is a 6,000-year-old medicine system. It's part of traditional Chinese medicine. Most of the time, it also is in several other East Asian medicine, Japanese, things like that. As far as we know, traditional Chinese medicine was the first one, though. We use tiny filiform needles that penetrate past the skin into the fascia and the cellular matrix, which I'll show you that in a second. And the needles are working directly with your nervous system and your circulatory system. The bioelectric energy that takes place throughout the human body is essential to life. Electromagnetic fields are produced by living cells that enable the action of muscles and transmission of information in nerves. So another way to think about that is what is the difference between a live body and a dead body? It has all the same cells, right? It's this bioelectric activity that is animating the cells to function. And that's what we're working with directly. Blood is essential in our medicine and in your health. It carries oxygen and nutrients to your body's tissues. It moves the hormones. It takes carbon dioxide and waste products away from the tissues. And it's needed to sustain life and promote the health of all the body's tissues. So one of the ways you can kind of think about it is acupuncture is stimulating blood circulation. It's stimulating a biochemical called adenosine that binds to the blood vessel and repairs it, so that we're actually opening the blood vessels and moving it. And by moving the blood, we're repairing receptor site damage on the organs and helping the organs to function better. And by the organs functioning better and the blood circulating, now our nervous system is functioning. And by all three functioning well, we have health in the body.
Did you say adenosine or adenosine?
Adenosine. Yeah. I talked about that a little bit more. All right, so this is where it gets good. Our whole body so all of our muscles have a connective tissue called fascia wrapping around them, but then our whole body has another layer of fascia wrapping around it. And it is the crisscrossing of these collagen fibers in the fascia in different directions, contralateral in the joints, that actually gives us our strength and our structure. So our bones, if you did not have the fascia, they wouldn't actually hold you up. They're just what the muscles wrap around and provide the mechanical force. It's the structure of your fascia that actually holds you up and gives you strength. The fascia looks like this on the outside, but on the inside, the collagen fibers look like little spider webs crisscrossing around. Water and fluid moves along these collagen fibers, and underneath it is this gelatinous goo full of cells called the extracellular matrix. And this is what we are working with acupuncture. All of our blood vessels run through the fascia, so if there's restrictions in the fascia, you'll also have restrictions in your blood vessels. You'll feel that most intensely when you're having a trigger point or pain in your muscle. It's because that constriction in the fascia has now reduced blood flow, and reduced blood flow is what causes the pain. And then all your nerves run through the fascia as well. So kind of a good visual is if you've ever heard of thoracic outlet syndrome, it's where you get numbness and tingling down the arms. Sometimes it gets misdiagnosed as carpal tunnel, but a lot of times it's actually coming from up here. This fascia has gotten restricted, and then all these blood vessels and nerves that come out through underneath the clavicle has been restricted, and so it's sending nerve damage impulses into the arm. So if you ever know someone that had carpal tunnel and they got surgery and it didn't fix anything, it's because their actual problem was coming from underneath their clavicle. Okay, so this is kind of a graphic representation of all the fascia crisscrossing across your body, and in that fascia are all those collagen fibers and the goo, the extracellular matrix, and then there are these cells called fibroblasts. And when we're using a needle, we're penetrating past the skin into this extracellular matrix. We're winding the collagen fibers and stimulating these fibroblast cells to release a biochemical response. Releases several things, but one of the most important things is adenosine. And adenosine is now binding to the epithelial lining of the blood vessel, repairing damage to the vessel, and it's also sending a signal through the spinal cord up to the brain saying, hey, let's heal this spot. We're working on this. It balances dopamine levels, which is why you feel so relaxed during treatment. So it's working specifically on the local level, but systemically as well. So you might not feel anything with the acupuncture needle, but a whole lot of biochemical processes are happening simultaneously with each insertion. A really great scientist named Helene Langevin, she's done a lot of research on this, on the mechanism behind acupuncture, and done like functional MRIs to show this response happening, and it's really cool. That's why I went back for my doctorate, is for this information. That's super cool. Okay, so let's get back to sleep. So now we know why acupuncture is helping you. We're helping to balance your neurotransmitters, repair your blood circulation, which helps balance the hormones, right? But what else is going on that's causing you to struggle to fall asleep? These are the main causes. Light and sound. If there's too much light in the room, your body will not be able to make melatonin at the appropriate levels. And if there's too much sound, you're triggering your nervous system that something dangerous might be happening, and so we need to stay awake and alert and protect ourselves and be on the move if we need to. Eating too little, too much, too early, or too late, these all can affect insomnia. I'll go over them specifically, but the key here is blood sugar levels. Eating high glycemic foods before bed. What happens is with high glycemic foods like carbohydrates, like a big bowl of pasta, for example, what that does is it spikes your blood sugar up really, really high, and then it immediately troughs out. And if your blood sugar dips too low while you're sleeping, your body is designed to give you a shot of cortisol or a shot of adrenaline to wake you up, because low blood sugar is dangerous. And so your body's like, oh crap, you need to wake up. We have to address this. Eating food sensitivities is a big one, especially in the afternoon or dinner. If you're eating food that you're allergic to, it's going to stimulate your immune system, and now you're going into all this inflammation and healing and trying to recover from that. Estrogen dominance is another huge thing with insomnia, and men, you don't get off the hook on this one. Estrogen dominance actually happens in men as well. Glutamate, GABA imbalance. We'll go over that a little bit more, but glutamate, GABA are, it's like melatonin and cortisol. They work antagonistically, so you can't have them both simultaneously. And if you have too much glutamate, that's stimulatory, and not enough GABA means you're not going to sleep, and you're probably suffering from depression as well. Calcification of the pineal gland is more common than you would think. A lot of people take calcium supplements. Calcium supplements can be quite dangerous because they calcify soft tissues, and they can actually calcify your pineal gland, making it not able to produce melatonin. And then nutritional gaps, especially magnesium, that's a huge one. Are we having fun yet? Okay. All right, light and sound. If you've heard of the diurnal curve, human beings have been getting their cues from the environment, seasons, the sun for many, many millennia. Long before we had light, like electric light, our bodies just responded to the sun. So any light in the room, especially those of us that love sleeping with the TV on, actually is affecting your ability to make melatonin. Blue light is especially impairs melatonin, and blue light is like your TV, computer screens, phones. It takes about 2 hours from exposure to blue light before your body will start making melatonin. So ideally, you want to have all your devices off for 2 hours before you want to go to bed. And like I said, noises create restlessness and sleep. And even if they don't wake you, your brain is monitoring the sound to make sure the predator's not about to pounce on you. So you're not going to get into that deep level of sleep that allows you to heal. So you may feel like you're sleeping, but if you're waking up and you're not like popping out of bed ready to go, you're probably having an issue here. Okay, what we eat and how much and when matters. Eating too much, digestion takes precedence over sleep hormones. So if we ate a really huge meal, we may feel tired, but that's not actually because we have the appropriate hormones. It's just because our body is overwhelmed with the digestion process. Eating too little or too early will cause the blood sugar levels to be too low when you go to sleep, and then they dip down while you're fasting in your sleep. And if it dips down too low, then you're gonna be shot up with that adrenaline or cortisol. Intermittent fasting is great, but not everybody is able to handle that. So if your last meal was at 3 o'clock, you might be finding yourself waking up at like 1 or 2 in the morning, wide awake, and probably with heart palpitations. Eating high glycemic foods, again, like pasta, blood sugar spikes and then troughs out. And eating food sensitivities, which we talked about. And then, yeah, so a good rule of thumb, your last meal needs to be about 3 hours before bed. If you tend to be more on the hypoglycemic range or suffer from low blood sugar, it's a good idea to have like a snack of like maybe an apple and some nuts before bed, because that helps to regulate your blood sugar, and then also those foods have melatonin in them. However, if you don't have low blood sugar, you don't want to snack right before bed. That's why you need me to help you figure out which one you are. Digestion and hormone site receptors. Our bodies need energy to function. We ingest food primarily in the form of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, and our digestive tract breaks it down into nutrients. The cells take in these nutrients and turn them into fuel. You need a proper balance of proteins and amino acids in order to properly digest. And under conditions of overfeeding or high-fat diets, the cell's defensive programs start initiating inflammation, and there begins to be a hormone cascade issue. So overeating or eating the wrong foods, one of the things that it's doing the most is actually damaging the receptor sites for the hormones. So all of your tissues, they have like these little binder sites. Your hormones are floating in your bloodstream. They find these little receptor sites, they bind to it, and then they tell the organ what to do. But if those receptor sites are damaged because of inflammation, then the hormone's going to float right past it and not go into the organ. So that's why you can have people that have hormone issues, but then they go and they do a blood test, and like doctor's like, no, you're fine. Well, you have enough free-floating hormone, but if your receptor site damage, if you're not getting the hormone to the organ, then you're not going to have the benefit of it, and so there's not a lab test to tell you that this is the problem. So you can have all kinds of hormonal problems, but there's not a lab test to diagnose that. Okay, estrogen dominance. Estrogens influence immune and inflammatory processes. Are correlated with higher incidence of inflammatory disease, menstrual cycle issues, autoimmune. Estrogens have a profound effect on metabolism and vice versa. So if one is out of balance, the other one will be too. And estrogens balance excessive body fat accumulation. Interesting fact, our adipose tissue is itself an endocrine tissue. It's producing estrogen. And if you start having more belly fat, that means that you have more estrogen, and if you start to burn that off without proper detoxifying or making sure that you don't have constipation, then you have the excess hormones, and now you have the excess metabolites as well. So then you really start having problems. That's why, I just watched a documentary on The Biggest Loser, how they are now, and all the contestants from the beginning, because they lost that weight so rapidly in the beginning, it damaged their receptor sites so dramatically that their metabolism is irreversibly destroyed. So most of those people gain the weight back, and it's significantly harder for them to lose it. Okay, glutamate and GABA imbalance. This is a really common cause of insomnia. GABA and glutamate are antagonistic to control each other to keep balance. Glutamate is our stimulatory neurotransmitter, and GABA is our calming neurotransmitter. And in order for melatonin to be optimally secreted and to be taken into the receptors, you need an evening shift of less glutamate and more GABA. This should happen normally, but if we do stressful things in the evening, it completely shuts down this process, and the glutamate stays high and the GABA stays low. And stressful things are like watching a crime show or the nightly news, working on your bills or your budget, to-do lists, having an argument with your spouse or a teenager, having a big workout, significant exercise in the evening is actually pretty detrimental to your health. Homework, projects that have a deadline, driving in traffic, alcohol, these are all stressors to your body and will create this glutamate GABA imbalance. This is really common with teenagers because they work all day at school and then they come home and now they've got to get all this homework done and they're doing these really stressful activities along with blue light from screens because they're working on their homework on screens, and then they're supposed to go right to bed and they can't because of this glutamate GABA imbalance. We talked about this a little bit. Calcification of the pineal gland usually comes from calcium supplements. Using excessive doses of calcium when it's not balanced with K2 will calcify the soft tissues. Basically what's happening is you're getting in all this calcium, but it's not being directed to the bones, and so it's just kind of going rogue in your bloodstream, and it's going to accumulate anywhere where there's oxidative damage. And those of us with food sensitivities or lots of stress or gut issues, we're going to have lots of oxidative damage. People that have atherosclerosis, like the the hardening of the arteries, and kidney stones, that's overcalcification of the soft tissues. And if you have kidney stones or atherosclerosis, it's a pretty good chance that you also have calcification of the pineal gland. Nutritional gaps. So to make melatonin, it's actually a hormonal cascade. Tryptophan gets turned into serotonin, which then gets turned into melatonin. But there are a myriad of nutritional minerals and vitamins needed in order to create this process. You need folate, niacin, B2 or riboflavin, and B6 specifically to convert the serotonin into melatonin. So either eating too many processed foods, not enough fruits and veggies, poor gut health like leaky gut, SIBO, acid reflux, alcohol, stress, these all create a deficiency of essential fatty acids, amino acids, vitamins, and minerals, and then creates a breakdown of this conversion. So most common deficiencies that I see in practice are magnesium and B vitamins. So things like muscle cramps or headaches or fatigue, achy muscles. You need ample amounts of riboflavin to make the conversion of serotonin to melatonin. Having a low protein diet or not enough amino acids will impair the tryptophan absorption. So again, lack of serotonin, lack of melatonin. Magnesium fuels hundreds of enzyme reactions in the body. It's super, super important for so many functions. A low magnesium affects everything. If you have the kind of insomnia where you've got busy racing mind, that's magnesium deficiency. And fun fact, 90% of the serotonin in the body is created in the gut. So poor gut health not only leads to digestive issues, but also mental health issues, anxiety, depression, and insomnia. Okay, so that's why it's hard to fall asleep. Now, why is it hard to stay asleep? Most common, this was actually me last night. My cat decided to meow in my face at 3 in the morning. Light, sound, temperature, allergens, blood sugar drops. These are the most common things that are waking us up. Making enough melatonin to fall asleep, but not enough to stay asleep. This is really common. Actually, let's go back to the environment for a second. We talked about light, we talked about sound. Temperature is a big thing. If you're not comfortable, if your temperature is fluctuating throughout the night, that's going to wake you up. You're not going to get to the deep levels that you need. And then allergens is actually a huge thing. A lot of people have so many things that they're allergic to in their bedroom that is triggering their immune system to be overacting all night long. And so again, they're not able to get into those deep levels. So a quick and easy fix that you can do at home is check what's going on in your bedroom. Washing your sheets more often is helpful. Checking your curtains for dust, checking underneath the bed for dust. having your pets not actually be in your bedroom. A lot of us have allergies to their dander, and having that on our pillow will make you sick at night. And getting an air filter for your bedroom is super helpful for sleep. So once we've rolled out environmental stuff, the number one cause of not staying asleep is blood sugar issues and insulin resistance. And we talked about this a little bit. Typically, doctors will not diagnose insulin resistance until there are obvious increased blood sugar in the lab work. But actually, there's so many more early and moderate levels that we can see that there's a problem before you get to that level. One thing we want to look at is your fasting insulin. Your blood sugar level can be completely normal, but your fasting insulin is skyrocketing, and that's a sign of insulin resistance. If your fasting blood sugar drops too low, your body will give you that push of cortisol to wake you up. And this is where it gets fun. If you also have low adrenals because you've been under so much stress and you don't have enough cortisol to get you through the day, your body's gonna just go ahead and skip that cortisol push and go straight to the jolt of adrenaline. So this is when you're like waking up at 3 in the morning and you're immediately going into stressful thoughts. That's that push of adrenaline. And if you're getting that push of adrenaline in the middle of the night, that means your blood sugar levels are not stable. So best treatment for this, a low glycemic dinner, followed by a small apple and a handful of nuts as a snack before bed. This helps to regulate blood sugar. And there are several foods that are good for melatonin. They also all happen to be on the high allergy food sensitivity list, of course. So you want to be careful, but like fruits, nuts are a really good one. Fatty fish, corn. Tart cherry is a good melatonin creator. Okay, another thing that wakes us up is increased urination. Getting up once a night is normal. That's not a big deal, especially if you're able to fall right back to sleep. But if you're getting up 2 or more times per night, this usually indicates that you've got low cortisol adrenal function. What's happening is that this hypoadrenals is actually creating more aldosterone in your system. That's a hormone that's triggering your kidneys to urinate. So treating the adrenals is actually really important in reducing the urination level. Men tend to struggle from increased urination at night due to the prostate, but interestingly enough, it's because of excess estrogen. Men will get estrogen dominance usually from xenoestrogens, meaning that it's coming from your food or environment, like pesticides, herbicides. A lot of your personal hygiene products actually they have xenoestrogens in them, so you want to kind of lean more toward organic personal hygiene products. You'll also get estrogen dominance from insulin resistance. Too much insulin converts the testosterone into estrogen. So like drinking a lot of beer, for example, affects the liver and will create an insulin resistance, and then that in turn creates more estrogen, which then creates more belly fat, which then creates more estrogen. So this is not good on many levels, but it will also increase urination, false urination like hesitation in the stream, and increased urgency. A lot of guys wonder why I'm asking them all these questions, but it's because I'm looking for their hormonal balance. They're like, I just have back pain. Why are you asking me that? That's why. Again, high glycemic diet is often the problem, but you don't want to self-medicate with melatonin. This is really common. People that have insomnia, they take a melatonin supplement, and that's actually quite dangerous. The pancreas has receptors for melatonin, and melatonin suppresses the secretion of insulin. So if melatonin levels are too high and insulin is suppressed, your blood sugar will drop and wake you up with cortisol, but then also set you up for a hormonal cascade of problems. High glycemic diet, insulin resistance, and oxidative stress all suppress insulin. melatonin supplementation will cause insulin resistance because too much melatonin drives down necessary insulin production. If you need melatonin, you want no more than 300 micrograms, not grams, micrograms. The typical dose of melatonin is 4 milligrams. This is 50 times the normal blood level. So supplementing with melatonin is almost never the answer. But if you've got jet lag or some kind of temporary stressor happening, then it's okay in the short term to use it, but only at the 300 micrograms. Waking too early means that you've got a cortisol waking response that's happening too early. If you don't have blackout curtains and there's light coming in through the window, that's going to stimulate the cortisol. Light will always stimulate the cortisol. It could be stress that's causing you to have too much cortisol. So maybe you're making enough melatonin to fall asleep, but you're not making enough to stay asleep. And this is because you have too much stress and too much cortisol. On the other hand, if you're waking up groggy and foggy, usually it means that you have too much melatonin, and the waking response in the morning is due to a sugar drop and not actually from cortisol. So this is really common too, is that they've got adrenal fatigue and they're making too much melatonin because they don't have any cortisol to offset that, but they're still waking up because they have insulin resistance and their sugar keeps dropping. Okay, so helpful tricks if you wake up too early is to do deep breathing exercises to help you go back to sleep. And what can really help with that is L-theanine or 5-HTP. But again, you don't want to self-diagnose, so you want to talk to your practitioner to see if that's an appropriate supplement for you. But if you're having this waking too early, L-theanine and 5-HTP taken in the nighttime usually corrects that. And then this also traces back to gut health, so make sure we're treating your gut. Restless leg syndrome is really common. 8 to 20% of the population has it, and not everyone who has it knows that they have it. So some people actually will sleep through it or sleep lightly through it, but because they're moving around so much, they're not actually getting into that third and fourth stage of deep sleep, and so they're not healing throughout the night. They're waking up tired and exhausted. There are multiple neurotransmitters at play, and excessive glutamates, excessive dopamine, and not enough adenosine is what's causing that restlessness in your legs. And if you remember, adenosine is specifically the biochemical that acupuncture is working on. It's a powerful modulator of glutamate and dopamine, which is why you feel so relaxed during acupuncture, is because we're regulating the glutamate and dopamine. We're repairing the receptor site damage and releasing adenosine. So medications have been designed recently to help treat restless leg syndrome. Unfortunately, it really only works in the beginning. Over the long term, it will make the problem worse because your body starts to compensate to that medication and try to get ahead of it. So the root cause 9 out of 10 times for restless leg syndrome is an iron deficiency in the brain. So that doesn't always show up in a blood test because it's specifically the iron in the brain. And what's happening is if the body struggles with suboptimal iron levels for long enough, the brain starts to segregate the iron and only send it to the most crucial parts of the brain, and so other parts of the brain are not getting any iron. And so then this affects the adenosine receptors, which leads to that too high glutamate and excess dopamine. Elevated ferritin levels, if you ever see that in your lab work, ferritin binds to iron, and that can be a sign of suboptimal iron levels. And again, the gut is really important. Poor gut health, leaky gut causes poor absorption of iron. So you can have enough iron in your blood, but again, it's not going where it needs to go. There's a big correlation with patients with irritable bowel and SIBO also having restless leg syndrome. Okay. Home stretch. Alcohol, medications, and stimulants. These are big ones that that make it so that we can't stay asleep. Regular intake of alcohol, especially every day, causes serious nutrient deficiencies, mostly B vitamins and in particular B1, which is thiamine. B1 is required to detoxify alcohol, but ironically when we take alcohol, it makes it so that we have impaired absorption of B1. The initial sign of B1 deficiency is muscle cramps and tightness, especially in the calves. And this is because thiamine is a crucial driver of cellular metabolism and it's preventing lactic acid buildup. So what's happening is without this B1, the cellular metabolism is not happening and you're having lactic buildup in your calves and it's causing that cramping. Alcohol also depletes magnesium, which as we talked about is vital for cellular metabolism, detoxing, potassium function, muscle health, sleep, and hundreds of other enzyme functions. So we need to have optimal magnesium. Some medications are actually stimulants. Definitely the ones like Ritalin, Adderall, things for ADHD, those are stimulants. And what's happening is people are prescribed the Ritalin to get them through the day, but then now they can't sleep at night, so then they're being given a benzodiazepine. Why that's dangerous is benzodiazepines are really hard to come off of, and they can permanently damage receptor sites in the brain. So it's not ideal. Caffeine is a stimulant. Some people are able to metabolize caffeine quickly, others are more slowly. Some people can have that afternoon cup of coffee and go right to bed and it's not a problem. That's because they're fast metabolizers. Chocolate actually has caffeine and another stimulant called theobromine. And so chocolate is actually a really high stimulatory food. So if you have chocolate after noon, that can keep you up all night. And some people can metabolize caffeine really easily, but they're slow metabolizers of theobromine. So they can have an afternoon coffee, but they can't have an afternoon chocolate. So if you struggle with insomnia, skip the afternoon chocolate. Also, I don't think I talked about it very much about the excessive exercise and how that can affect us. When we do a large exercise like a run or CrossFit or whatever, that stimulates high levels of cortisol and adrenaline, and will once again reduce our ability to make melatonin. So people that have really busy work schedules and then like, well, I'll just hit the gym after work, that's actually, you need a good 4 or 5 hours to recover from that. So that can, you know, your 8 p.m. workout, you're probably not going to go to bed until like 2. However, a nice, easy exercise is very calming to the nervous system. So taking an evening walk, and then you come home to a nice, dimly lit house, that's really calming to the body, and you're able to sleep much better. Okay, so in conclusion, the specific cause of insomnia is specific to the individual. There's lots of reasons. Nutrition, nutritional gaps, gut health, medications, lifestyle habits, history, stress, and hormones. And by history, I mean, you know, trauma, things like that. That's very important in our ability to sleep. Usually it's a combination of a breakdown of all of these things. Most of the people that come to me have a breakdown of all of these things. Supplementation is important, but do not self-prescribe. As we learn, the wrong supplementation will either not help at all or even make it worse. Regular acupuncture is important for balancing neurotransmitters, improving blood circulation and blood sugars, hormone receptor sites, and calming the nervous system. Living in the sympathetic nervous system full-time will make you sick and create a hormonal cascade failure. You gotta find ways to get into that parasympathetic mode. That means meditation, prayer, gratitude, working through your resentments, having peace and quiet, reducing light and sound in the evening. And the best way to support yourself is through nutrition, mild exercise, sleep hygiene, which is that handout on your clipboard, which by the way, that handout was worth the cost of admission. Prayer, meditation, and gratitude. And then another fun fact, or little tip. holy basil tea with glycine is really calming and produces melatonin without all the added side effects. So drinking a cup of holy basil tea with a little bit of glycine will help you fall asleep more naturally. Glycine is really sweet, so it's like adding a sweetener to your tea, but it's not actually a sugar. So it's an essential amino acid for that tryptophan, serotonin, melatonin conversion. Great. That's a lot of information. Yes.
So magnesium glycinate, would that be okay?
Yeah, magnesium glycinate is great, and depending on if you have like some amino acid deficiencies that are causing the insomnia, you can even do like a magnesium taurate. Then you're getting magnesium and the amino acids. Yeah. Any other questions? You guys ready for the quiz?
No.
No?
Too much checking data.
Yeah, that's why I give you the handouts and the information. It's a lot, and I'll send you guys a recording of today so you can have a watch it back.